Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah bil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammad Nabil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa ba'd. Insha'Allah, our plan for today is to discuss and to introduce the life of one of the greatest Islamic heroes in history, and perhaps the greatest naval commander. We know that sometimes there are battles on land, and the majority of battles and wars are fought on land. But this is a whole new ballgame. This is battles, attacks, hand-to-hand combat, artillery in the ocean. So this individual was perhaps the greatest naval commander in the history of mankind. This isn't me saying this. This is multiple people who have attested to this fact. So we will be discussing the life of the four brothers known as the Barbarossa brothers. So this term Barbarossa is not an Arabic word. It's not an Islamic word. So as some background before we begin, Barbarossa means red beard in Italian. It means someone who has a red beard. And these brothers, they, as we will learn about them, they didn't have India-Pakistani roots. They didn't have Arab roots. They, as we will learn, they came from the Greek island of Lesbos. They came from the Greek island known as Lesbos. And they had, as a result, they had partial Greek Albanian blood, and they also had Turkish blood as well. So they became famous through the nickname Barbarossa, Redbeard. But we will learn more about their Islamic names as well. And we will also learn there wasn't one individual, there are four brothers. So we will learn more about these four brothers and more about their story. Before we begin, we will do a brief introduction in which we will discuss, number one, the importance of learning about Islamic history, learning about Islamic heroes, and learning specifically about Ottoman history. Then secondly, we will discuss the importance of the life of the Barbarossa brothers and the importance of their story and an overview of their story as well. We will also discuss the difference between movies and real life and the famous TRT-1 Barbaroslar series compared to real life. So first of all, we have discussed this on multiple times in the past, that we as Muslims need to learn about our history. In fact, I've been advocating this concept of basic Islamic literacy and also basic Islamic historical literacy. Meaning, every Muslim should know about the important events in Islam. They should know about the more important empires in Islam. The Ottoman Empire, the Muslim Kingdom of Spain, and so on. They should know about important Muslim heroes, important Muslim scholars, important Muslim poets, important Muslim writers, important Muslim captains, and so on. As we know, the identity of a people is connected with their history. And the pride of a people and their identity is also connected with their roots. If there's a strong connection with their legacy and their roots, then there are people who are proud of themselves. They have an identity. And once you cut a people off from their history and their legacy, that is when they no longer have identity and they will easily lose who they are. And secondly, we also discuss the importance of real role models and positive and good role models. Unfortunately, if you ask most of us about the celebrities and the famous people today, we can give you facts, we can give you data, weird facts about so-and-so. Weird facts about XYZ sports player. How many Instagram followers do they have? Where did they go to college? Where did they grow up? What's their number, basketball jersey number, etc., etc. And these individuals, as we know, they do not represent good values. The majority of them are not Muslims. And they themselves are not the best examples of how to live life. There's always scandals, there's always issues of morality, and there's always issues of even good judgment, unfortunately. So we discussed the importance of good role models, learning about individuals who made an impact on society, learning about individuals who changed the course of history, learning about individuals who were models of piety and models of goodness and charity and kindness. So that brings us to the discussion of these four brothers, the Barbarossa brothers. And for me, it all started about 1 year ago with one question. You may ask, for 1 year I've been studying the life of the Barbarossa brothers and doing research and gathering information. How did it start? It started with one question. Approximately 1 year ago, I was sitting in class in Union City in Masjid al-Huda. And during the class, the students are interested, they'll ask questions on topic, they'll ask questions sometimes off topic. So, as the saying goes, حُسْنُ السُّؤَالِ نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ. A good question is half of knowledge. And at that time, there was discussion on a new TV series on TRT1, a Turkish historical TV series known as Barbaroslar, on the lives of the Barbarossa brothers. So the student asked, Mufti Sahib, can you tell us more about this individual and his life? So I thought to myself, okay, yes, he was a naval commander. Yes, he came from the Ottoman Empire, but what else do I really know? So I thought to myself, what else do I really know? I started looking for books, I started looking for more information, and that's when the journey began. And a book which I recommend every single person reads, right? An excellent book in English, The Sultan's Admiral. The Sultan's Admiral. Interesting enough, the word admiral comes from the Arabic language. Right? When we look at words in English which have origins in Islamic roots and which have origins in Arabic words, admiral comes from the Arabic word Amirul Bahr, the leader or the person in charge of naval expeditions, Amirul Bahr, which we would of course translate as admiral. So the Sultan's Admiral, Barbarossa, Pirate and Empire Builder, written by Ernle Bradford. Right, so this is a book which I myself came across about a year ago and which I read from beginning to end. And this was the beginning of the journey. So I highly recommend obtaining a copy of this book and reading it. Unfortunately, it's out of print. And unfortunately, the cheapest copy on Amazon is about $400. So the book is out of print. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. But lucky enough, we have a few copies of the book. And we have a few extra copies of the book. So inshallah, we will make arrangement within our own masjid that we will check these books out. Yes, please don't go and sell them on Amazon. Right? And please don't go and try to rip anyone off. We will make these books waqf, which means that they become the property of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And they'll become property of the masjid. So these two books, right, as I said, they're out of print. We will leave them for anyone who wants to read and learn more. Right? The book is about 215 pages. Right? So this is for the benefit of the community and for anyone who wants to read more and to learn more. And inshallah, once you're done, you can give it back. And that way, inshallah, more people can benefit and more people can read, inshallah. So, inshallah, that will be, inshallah, in the end, inshallah, whoever is interested, inshallah, can volunteer and take a copy home, inshallah. So the question comes up, why is this story important? Why is the life of the Barbarossa brothers such a big deal? So, friends, there's a few factors. Number one, that these four brothers, inshallah, we'll learn more about these brothers as well and their names. They paved the way for Ottoman domination in the Mediterranean Ocean for 300 years. These individuals laid the foundation. They were pioneers, and they established, as we know, one is military supremacy on land. One is in battles, and in battles on land, one is you have a superior army. These four individuals arguably, single-handedly established naval domination, domination on the ocean, domination in the Mediterranean Sea for the Ottoman Empire for centuries to come. Many people have said this. Ottoman naval domination began from the day Hayreddin Barbarossa was appointed in charge of the Ottoman Navy, as we will soon learn. And this is also worth noting as well. Most likely you can figure out what these two words mean. They're used in Ottoman, but they also, you can figure out what they mean in other languages. Kaptan Darya. Kaptan Darya. Right? This was a special term which Sultan Sulayman al-Qanuni, arguably the greatest Ottoman Sultan in history, popularly known in the West as Sulayman the Magnificent, and in the Muslim circles known as Sulayman the Lawgiver. Right? So Hayreddin Barbarossa and the Barbarossa brothers lived during the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, when Sultan Sulayman the Magnificent was ruler. And Sultan Sulayman assigned a special post, a special position, known as Kaptan Darya, for Hayreddin Barbarossa. We will translate this in English. Kaptan Darya, the Grand Admiral of the Royal Ottoman Navy. Right? Keep in mind, the Ottoman Empire at that time was massive. Right? It wasn't just Turkey, you guys. Understand this. The Ottoman Empire covered much of Eastern Europe. Greece was under Muslim rule for hundreds of years. Albania was under Muslim rule for hundreds of years. Hungary was under Muslim rule for hundreds of years. And so on. And many of the Mediterranean islands were also under Ottoman rule for hundreds of years. So Hayreddin Barbarossa was the official Grand Admiral. There's other captains, there are other admirals. He was the top and the Grand Admiral from all the other admirals for the entire Ottoman Empire at that time. So this gives us an idea of the importance of the story and the reason for learning more about this great individual. He was a hero in his own right. As we have said, arguably the greatest naval commander in history. Hands down, Muslim or non-Muslim, the greatest naval commander in history. And learning more about him. So, keep in mind, Hayreddin Barbarossa is one of the most misunderstood individuals in history. It's also why it's so important to clear the record. In Europe at the time, he was known as the boogeyman. Hayreddin Barbarossa, just the name struck terror and fear in the hearts of the Europeans. Parents, as is documented, parents would scare their children. If you're not going to be good at home, Barbarossa is coming after you. Watch out. Parents would scare their children with his name. When he would be in the ocean, when the enemy just heard of this name, they gave up. Without a fight, they would give up and give their ships. We surrender, that's it. And he was a living celebrity at a time before social media. How does that work, respected friends? He was a living celebrity. Not many people know that Hayreddin Barbarossa lived in France, was called to France, and spent 1 year near Marseille, near the coast of France. He spent 1 year in Europe. And during that time, non-Muslims, people from all over Europe, came just to see him. He was that famous. They wanted to see, is he real? What type of person is he? We want to meet him. People from all over Paris and even Spain came just to meet him. He was a living celebrity. And just to get a glimpse of him, just to see him and meet him, people will travel long distances. And not only Muslims, non-Muslims as well. So that's why clearing the record of history is so important. Right? As I posted on social media, I will show you children's books. Pirates of the Mediterranean, Hayreddin Barbarossa. Learn more about a series of pirates. To the non-Muslims, that's all he is. Just like you have Captain Rip or famous pirates throughout history. In the West, he is nothing more than a pirate. He used to rob people in the ocean, and that's it. And just like pirates have patches, they run away from the police, they hide, they have hideouts, they make people walk the plank, they torture people, they rob people. In the eyes of the West, that's all he is. And that's why he's so misunderstood. From an Islamic perspective and from an Ottoman perspective, it's important to clear the record and to learn exactly who he was. Right? This is where propaganda, this is where the official record is so important. And this is why the real history is so important. So for the record, how many pirates do you know who are educated and know 6 languages? Think about this, respected friends. This is why history twists things. And the Western bias towards history, and specifically Eastern history, why this is so important. How many pirates do you know who are educated and wrote books? How many pirates do you know who knew 6 languages? Hayreddin Barbarossa was highly educated. He knew Spanish, he knew Turkish, he knew Greek/Albanian, he knew Arabic, he knew French, and he knew Italian. He knew 6 languages. And as you will learn more about him, he wasn't this mean and scary looking pirate that kills people without discrimination. Hayreddin Barbarossa, as the Ottoman historians point out, he was a saint. He was a waliullah. Think about this, respected friends. Think about the spectrum and the variation between the truth. One is to consider a person a saint, a person who had documented miracles displayed on their hands. One is a person who is very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, had a very close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they would make dua and ask to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, immediately it would be answered. And one is declaring a person to be an evil person, to be a pirate, and to be a robber. Look at the variation between the two. So our objective today is not to cover every aspect of Hayreddin Barbarossa's life. That is not possible. We would need a good 10 to 15 hours. So our objective today is not to cover every aspect of the life of this great individual and his brothers. But today what we will do, today is meant to be a sneak peek. Today is meant to be stimulation, encouragement, and inspiration. And inshallah, then thereafter we can go and learn more. We can go and read up and learn more. And one of the most amazing book projects that I have ever been involved in is the official biography of Hayreddin Barbarossa. So think about this, respected friends. When we go through history, you will find various biographies written about individuals, written about famous individuals. For example, Sir Francis Drake, also a controversial personality. As we know, the high school in the region here is named after Sir Francis Drake. Entire area and city is named after Sir Francis Drake. And recently there was some controversy about his statue and removing his statue and so on. And did he really land here in Marin County or Northern California or not? that itself raises some issues. There are approximately 15 to 20 biographies written about Sir Francis Drake. 15 to 20. Some were written during his lifetime, some were written afterwards, some were written in English, some were written in Spanish, and so on. So when it comes to biographies, there are biased biographies, there are objective biographies, there are first-hand reports, and there are biographies written 500 years after the person passed away. So just to put things in perspective, the English book that you see in front of you, the Sultan's Admiral, was written roughly 400 years after the death of the Barbarossa brothers. Whereas, during the lifetime of the Barbarossa brothers, they dictated their own biography to a scribe. Talk about first-hand source, getting it from the horse's mouth directly. And very interesting, the same Sultan Sulayman al-Qanuni, a visionary in his own right, one of the greatest rulers the world has ever seen. Sultan Sulayman Qanuni, Sulayman the Magnificent, sent a direct order to Hayreddin Barbarossa. I want you to write about your life, compile it, and send it to me in 2 books. Write about your whole life story, all the battles that you engaged in, what happened to your brothers, the background, everything. Write it to me in the form of a book and send it to me. So, my friends, understand the significance of that. When the Ottoman Sultan, when the president of a country gives you a command, you better listen. It would be like Joe Biden sending a request to a person in this gathering. I want you to do this for me. So, fulfilling the request and obeying the request of Sulayman the Magnificent, Hayreddin Barbarossa called one of his scribes. His name was Muradi Rais, a very eloquent individual and an amazing writer. And an individual who spent 16 years in the company of Hayreddin Barbarossa, one of his closest comrades, an individual who was there through thick and thin, who was there for the great battles of Islam. Hayreddin Barbarossa dictated to him his entire life story. And that was recorded in Ottoman Turkish. And that has been preserved through manuscripts for the last 500 years. You may ask, respected friends, where is this book? And when can we get access to it? So interestingly enough, this book was translated to Spanish 20 years after the death of Hayreddin Barbarossa. In 1570, already this book was translated into Spanish. We talk about a bestseller, we talk about going viral. Within a short period of time, manuscripts of this book in Ottoman Turkish reached Spain and the Vatican. Friends, ponder and reflect over this. Barbarossa was at war with Europe. He was at war with the Spanish. He was at war with the Vatican. But there was so much interest in his life. They were among the first ones to receive his biography and to read it, and also to translate it into their own languages. So the official biography of Hayreddin Barbarossa during the last 400 years has been translated into Spanish, has been translated into Arabic, has been translated into French, has been translated into Italian, and even been translated into Hungarian. But it has never been translated to English. And by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are about 95% done with the translation of both parts of his biography. Right? There are 2 parts. One is about the first part of his life. The second is about his time in France. And that second part has never been translated before in any language. And very interesting, the second part of Hayreddin Barbarossa's life, that manuscript is only one manuscript in the world. It's not found in Turkey. It's not found in the Muslim countries. Rather, it is found in France, in Paris, France. They don't even read Ottoman French. They don't even read Ottoman Turkish in France. But somehow or another, they realized the importance of this, and they purchased and they obtained this book, and it's now stored in the Library of Paris. So this gives us an idea of this great individual's life. And I will say, anyone who is interested further needs to have a proper historical context. Some of you perhaps have watched some of the Barbaroslar shows on TRT1. And I will say, number one, please, for authentic information, do not turn to TV shows. Do not turn to historical dramas. In fact, the genre here is referred to as historical fiction. For example, Braveheart. For example, many of these recreations of history, Kingdoms of Heaven, and so on. The genre is known as historical fiction. Right? That's why they say, based on a true story. What does that tell you, respected friends? It's not necessarily real. Right? It's fiction at the end of the day. So I strongly encourage obtaining authentic information from the reliable sources and from the real historical sources. Take this book and read this book. And go back to the original sources. The TV show is 95% fake. In fact, any person who knows the story of the Barbarossa brothers will tell you, we don't recognize this story. The plot is completely different. It is not based on facts. It is not based on history. It is not based on authentic sources. Yes, it is exciting. Yes, the plot grips you and they keep you captivated till the next show. But unfortunately, it's not real. Unfortunately, it has very little to do with real life. So, I encourage, right, and the shows are long. Think about this, you guys. Normally, a Netflix show or normally a show is an hour. Here, each episode is 2.5 hours. Each episode is like a movie within itself. 2.5 hour episodes. And as I said, there's not much to learn there. There's very little to do with history and very little to do with real life. So the question is, what is the real story about these brothers? And what is real history? So inshallah, what we'll do now, I will give some background reading, and inshallah we'll do a brief overview of the life of the four brothers. So keep in mind that to understand a story properly, you need to know the historical background and the context of the time that these people lived in. You might ask, for example, in the show, or for example, in the story, right? A young person might ask this question: what type of weapons did they have? So, for example, our young person will ask, in those days, did they fight with machine guns? And did they fight with pistols? What did they fight with? Keep in mind, the Barbarossa brothers lived approximately 500 years ago. Right? So, the weapons they used, the latest weapons and technology of the time was completely different. Right? And they had to adjust accordingly. They didn't have machine guns. They didn't have scopes. They didn't have red light and guided heat-seeking weapons, etc., etc. Their weaponry and their technology was also different. So in understanding context, you also have to understand the ships were also different as well. You guys, did they have these large cruise ships and large aircraft carriers and so on during that time? No, they didn't. Their ships were also different, and the technology was also different as well. Did they have powered and gas-powered boats? No, they did not. Did they have automatic weapons? No, they did not. Did they have, for example, electric motors to run their boats? No, they did not. So we have to look at things in the proper context. So who were the main rulers during that time? That also means we have to learn context. Who were the main players in the Mediterranean world? we have to go back and understand geography. We have to understand the two major superpowers at that time. Keep in mind that the 16th century was not too far away from the Crusades. And arguably, during the 16th century, there was an ongoing crusade between the Muslim world and Christian Europe. So this is also important to understand in context. It was a battle of religion, and it was very much a battle of civilizations as well. The Ottoman Empire was the Muslim superpower at that time. And the Europeans, under the Pope and under Catholicism, at times would merge forces and join forces and attack the Muslims. So this historical context is important. The Muslim world was at war with the Christian world. So keep this in mind. It was very much a battle of religion. And who were the main players? Right? So, to understand the story of Hayreddin Barbarossa, you have to understand his arch enemies. You have to understand from the European world, from the European Christians, who was the greatest power at that time? Does anyone know the answer, you guys? From all the European nations, who was the most powerful nation that Hayreddin Barbarossa took on? You guys can guess, inshallah. Who has the idea, inshallah? Right, so this is why history is so important. Hayreddin Barbarossa's arch enemy and his greatest nemesis, which country were they from? No. So Greece was under the Ottoman rule. Greece was Muslim at the time. Italy, no, close. The Spanish. Right, the Spanish. Right, so keep in mind, we have to look at history as well. Hayreddin Barbarossa and the brothers were born the year 1485. 1485, Hayreddin Barbarossa was born. His eldest brother was born 1474. So to put things in perspective, 1492. Every Muslim should know 1492, you guys. And should know what we lost. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella, they conquered the last existing Muslim kingdom in Spain. Does anyone know what was the last existing Muslim kingdom in Spain? Yes. Granada. Okay, good. So every Muslim should know this date. So keep in mind, after this, the Muslims to a large extent were expelled or banished or exiled from Spain. And where did they go? Many of them went to North Africa. And we will learn the significance of the Barbarossa brothers and North Africa as well. So this is the historical context. Right? When we discuss a time period, we need to know the important incidents. Anyone living in the 20th century or the 21st century has to know what 9/11 is, has to know what the Vietnam War is, has to know what COVID or the pandemic is. Right? These are important events during a lifetime. Likewise, in the 16th century, during the life of the Barbarossa brothers, you have to know 1492. This shaped the entire 16th century. When the Muslims were finally conquered and what is referred to as reconquista, the act of reconquering all of Spain and kicking out the Muslims and making it into a Christian country. So we also have to know the key players here as well. So who was the emperor of Europe? Right? So one is a king, one is the emperor. And one is also the Holy Roman Emperor. So his name was Emperor Charles V. Look him up, you guys. There's biographies written about him. He was the arch nemesis of Hayreddin Barbarossa and Sulayman the Magnificent. Emperor, they refer to him as the Holy Emperor, Charles V. Right? One is the king of his country, then they had the Holy Roman Emperor, who was appointed by the Pope. So Emperor Charles V was the arch enemy of Barbarossa. And not only did he rule over Spain, he also ruled over parts of Flanders. He ruled over parts of Italy. And he ruled over much of Europe at that time. If you look at a map, you will see he ruled over multiple countries. And he was the most powerful European monarch in the world at that time. But keep in mind, to a great extent, he lived on land. And like we said, Sultan Sulayman the Magnificent, his kingdom was also based on the land. His empire was also based on the land. So just as Sultan Sulayman the Magnificent, he had his Grand Admiral, Hayreddin Barbarossa. Likewise, Emperor Charles V also had his Royal Admiral as well. His name was Andrea Doria. It's also an important name to know. Andrea Doria was the arch nemesis of Hayreddin Barbarossa. So, respected friends, background is important. Understanding the technology at that time, understanding the kings of that time, understanding the dynamics and historical context of that time. An excellent book to read, Empires of the Sea. Empires of the Sea. Right? Discussing the Ottoman battles, naval battles versus the Europeans. Empires of the Sea, an excellent book to read. You won't put it down. Right? Read it from beginning to end. It's also on Audible as well. Empires of the Sea, that's recommended reading. Another important book, Four Princes. Four Princes. Again, discussing the 16th century and discussing the four greatest kings of that time. Sultan Sulayman is one of them, Sulayman the Magnificent. King Henry is part of there. Emperor Charles V and King Francis of France. Four Princes, another book to read. Another important book to read, Gunpowder and Galleys. Gunpowder and Galleys. Keep in mind, the 16th century was the beginning of the use of gunpowder. And there was a weapon used at that time. Keep in mind, before that, generally it was the crossbow, it was generally the bow and arrow, but gunpowder changed the entire landscape. Gunpowder was a game changer. So remember this term, arquebusier. Arquebusier. Right? Arquebus was a primitive form of a musket. Right? You used gunpowder, you could shoot people at close range and kill people. So knowing the weaponry and knowing the weapons and the cannons that were used is important as well. So galleys, a galley was a oar-powered ship. Right? And it was a great warship at that time. Right? So there are a number of ships that were famous during that time. Knowing the names of those ships and knowing how they operated is important as well. At that time, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have electric motors. So either you have two options, oar-powered or human-powered or wind-powered. So to understand these ships, understand how they operated is also important. And their names as well. So galleys, which were oar-powered ships, were also a game changer as well. And to power one large oar-powered ship, you might need 100 rowers, or 100 oar slaves as they're called. So you need humans to run these ships, and you need large amounts of humans to run these ships as well. So we'll give a little bit more background and a sneak peek to the life of these individuals. So next, as we have mentioned, these four brothers were born in the Ottoman Empire. Right? They were born at the time in an island known as Lesbos, that is right off the coast of Greece. You can type it in on Google Maps. Right? Understanding the geography here is important. Greece is the country next to Turkey today. And Greece at that time was part of the Ottoman Empire. So these four brothers were born on this island. Their father was a sipahi. This is a term that's important to know. Today we have these elite military units, Navy SEALs, operational forces, and Navy SEALs, and so on. Or we have, for example, we have the Navy, we have the Navy SEALs, and so on. We have elite corps and so on. So a sipahi was a cavalryman. He was an elite soldier under the Ottoman Empire. So the father of these four brothers was a soldier. So you can see where their military background came from. And he was part of the conquering army that conquered the island of Lesbos in the year 1462. They conquered this island, and he stayed over as a guard or as part of the garrison, as the Ottoman garrison, assigned to look after that island. So he's a single man, he's having a difficult time. So these troops ask permission to get married because they're assigned to live there, they don't have families, so they marry the local woman. So Yaqub was his name. He was an Ottoman soldier and part of the elite Ottoman soldiers. He married a local girl. Her name, according to some sources, was Catherine. She was not a non-Muslim. She was a local Greek woman or Albanian woman, and the two of them got married. And according to reports, they had 4 sons known as the 4 Barbarossa brothers. So learning these names is important. The 4 brothers, from eldest to youngest, Aruj. Right? So keep in mind, the Ottoman or Turkish way of writing names is different from the way it's pronounced. Right? You'll see online, O-R-U-C. Right? That's the name. Pronounced in Arabic, it's Aruj. But the way it's spelled is completely different from the way it's pronounced. This is Turkish spelling. Unfortunately, the corruption of Latin that came into the Turkish language. Keep in mind, the original Ottoman was written in Arabic script. And very recently, it was switched over to Turkish script. So Aruj was the eldest brother. And the second brother was Ilyas. The third brother was Ishaaq. The fourth brother was Khidr. Khidr, as in the story of Musa and Khidr. So this was the name, these were the 4 brothers of Yaqub Agha who grew up in Lesbos. They grew up as Muslims. Their father was a Muslim, and they grew up as Muslims. And as we will learn about their stories, right? So if you guys are watching the show, spoiler alert, from these 4 brothers, 3 became martyrs in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 3 became shaheed. Right? They were great, they were brave individuals, they were great soldiers, and 3 of them gave their lives in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So remember these names, right? The 2 most famous brothers were Aruj and Khidr. And Khidr is also known as Khairuddin. So, remember these names again: Aruj, Ilyas, Ishaaq, and Khidr. And Khidr's nickname was Khairuddin, the goodness of Islam, the goodness of religion. So Aruj was born in the year 1474. Khidr was born in the year 1485. And if you study their lives, they were great seamen. Right? They lived on an island, they did business on ships, and they spent much of their life in the sea and the ocean as traders, and later on as Muslim warriors. So we will discuss 5 important incidents during the life of time of these brothers, inshallah. Inshallah, then we'll end, inshallah. As we said, we can't cover everything. We need 5 to 10 hours to cover the entire life of these individuals. And inshallah, you can read further, inshallah, when the official biography is published, and when you have time, you can read further, inshallah. So we will discuss the highlights and give a sneak peek on the life of these individuals. So around the year 1509, just so you understand the instability, the danger, and the risks in even just traveling at that time, right? The ocean was a free-for-all, right? There was an ongoing war between Islam and Christianity. And the Mediterranean Ocean was a free-for-all. Sometimes Muslims would travel for Hajj. They would be robbed on the way and killed on the way. There was no safety. It was danger, and it was a free-for-all. Every man for yourself. If the Muslims caught the Christians, then they would plunder them, they would rob them and capture them. If the Christians caught the Muslims, they would kill them and rob them. Right? It was a war, you guys. It wasn't piracy, it was a real war. So one day, around 1508, Aruj is approximately 38, 39 years old. Him and his brother are doing business. And they are cited by the Crusaders of that time. Right? If you look at them up, their name is the Knights of St. John, who were living in Rhodes at the time. The Knights of St. John. Right? There are books written about them as well. Probably among the most racist and among the most indoctrinated people in the world. The Knights of St. John. Right? For them, the world was black and white, and the Crusades were still going on. Any Muslim they would attack and kill and capture, just because they were Muslim. Right? It was a battle of the civilizations, and the Knights of St. John, they were fanatics in the right sense of the word. Read more about them. They see this Ottoman and this non-Christian who is traveling. They went after them and captured them. And in the first round of attacks, Ilyas is made a martyr, he dies. So this is around 1508. So anyone who is watching the show, the reuniting of the four brothers and the four brothers gathering together and going to battle, that never happened. It's fake, you guys. It never happened. Right? So, looking back in history, right, history often goes against what it is you see in the movies and what you see in TV. So this was a major event. Aruj was taken as a prisoner. His brother was killed right off the bat. And to understand how difficult life was at that time, Aruj serves as a oar slave, as a galley slave. So what is his life? He is chained to a bench, and all day he has to oar and row the ship. That's it. For 2 years, that's his life. Barely enough food to survive, kept in a prison, tortured as well, and that was his life for 2 years. And one of his brothers has already died. So the next important event is that in the Ottoman Empire, a ban was placed on any privateers or private seamen from traveling. This was around the year 1511. A ban on all ships traveling in and out and throughout the Ottoman Empire. So Aruj leaves his native town in Lesbos, leaves the Ottoman Empire, and heads towards North Africa. Specifically towards a city known as Jerba. Right, you guys can look this up. This is off the coast of Algeria. And his brother as well, Khidr or Hayreddin, leaves his native hometown and they head towards North Africa. Now, what is the significance of North Africa? North Africa is not too far away from Italy and not too far away from Spain as well. And there was great wealth in Genoa, in Rome, in the Vatican, in Spain, and ships would travel back and forth. And keep in mind, you guys, there was no peace. The Muslims were at war with the Christians. The Ottomans were at war with Europe. So anything goes. You catch your enemy ship, then it's fair game. There was no peace treaty at that time. You see enemy ship, you capture, it's fair game. So that's why technically it's incorrect to call them pirates. They were not pirates. The Barbarossa brothers did not attack Muslim ships. They recognized Muslim ships, they are brothers. They only attacked enemy ships. So North Africa was their base. And they spent a good portion of their lives in North Africa. So we'll discuss only a few more incidents, inshallah, and then we'll end, inshallah. So the next important incident was the Barbarossa brothers reaching out to the Ottoman Sultan. Right? So keep in mind, look at the distance. There is a long distance between North Africa and Turkey or Istanbul. Right? Look, one is in the Western Mediterranean, the other is in the Eastern Mediterranean. And at that time, North Africa was ruled by individual rulers or by petty kingdoms. So this was a big step. Around the year 1521, the Barbarossa brothers reached out to Sultan Sulayman, the Ottoman Sultan at that time. And they received authorization and also received representatives from the Ottoman Sultan. So this linked them up with the Ottoman Empire. And keep in mind, the Ottoman Empire was the greatest Muslim empire of the time and had great resources and a great military and great soldiers as well. So this was another important incident. The year 1518 is also important. Aruj Rais died as a martyr, and his brother Ishaaq Rais died in battle with the Spanish. Right? The Spanish, if you look at the two countries, right, on opposite sides of the Mediterranean, you have Spain in northern Europe, and then in the northern Mediterranean, and look below, you see Tunisia and Algeria. So, as we mentioned before, the arch nemesis of the Barbarossa brothers was Emperor Charles V in Spain. So they sent an expedition against the Barbarossa brothers, and the year 1518, Aruj Barbarossa was martyred and he passed away. And his brother Ishaaq Rais also passed away as well. If you look at the story, unfortunately, the Spanish granted them safety and peace and said, lay down your weapons, you are safe. They went against their word and killed the brothers. And the brothers went down fighting and defending themselves. So this was the year 1518. The next important incident, the year 1533, Sultan Sulayman calls Hayreddin Barbarossa to Istanbul. And he says, I want to bring you here, and I'm going to make you the Grand Admiral of the Ottoman Navy. So he was no longer just the ruler of Algeria or Algiers. He became the Grand Admiral of the entire Ottoman Empire at that time. That was the year 1534 and 1533. So you guys understand the important battles. It's also important to understand these great battles and wars that took place during the lifetime of Sulayman the Magnificent and Hayreddin Barbarossa. In the year 1534, Hayreddin Barbarossa sailed to Tunis, the main city of Tunisia, off the coast. And he captured Tunis and he liberated Tunis. You guys, to understand the threat posed by Hayreddin Barbarossa, Emperor Charles V, who ruled over about 5 countries, in person, he came to Tunis just to kill Barbarossa and wipe him off the face of the earth. This was the year 1535. A joint European force came all the way from northern Europe or northern Mediterranean to the coast and to the city of Tunis just against Barbarossa. That's how much a threat he was. And that's how much danger he presented to Europe at that time. So this was the year 1535. The Europeans invade Tunis and they capture Tunis and they try to kill Barbarossa. But they were not successful. Now the last 2 incidents. Respected friends, when we look through Islamic history, it's important to learn of these important battles, of these decisive battles that changed the course of history and really changed the course of mankind as well. As Muslims, many of these famous battles in the last 1400 years, we should know the name of Yarmouk. We should know the name of Qadisiyah. We should know the name of Hittin. Right? Who here knows who was the Muslim hero in the Battle of Hittin, you guys? Who knows the answer? Every single one of us should know this name. Hittin was the battle for the liberation of Jerusalem. And who was there? Salahuddin Ayyubi, also known as Saladin or Salahuddin Ayyubi. So these are some of the great battles in Islamic history. And the greatest battle in the 16th century, perhaps one of the greatest battles between a combined force of Europe under the Holy League, organized by the Pope himself. The Holy League, all of Europe, all of Christian Europe against the Muslims. This was the Battle of Preveza. This is a name every single one of us should know. Preveza is a small area right off the coast of Greece. And this historic and decisive battle between the Ottoman Empire and Christian Europe took place in the year 1538. And Think about this. Hayreddin Barbarossa took on all of Europe and soundly defeated all of Europe. He wiped them out. He defeated them. And he thoroughly defeated them, despite being outnumbered. 100 ships against 400 or 500 ships. Lacking resources, lacking manpower. He thoroughly defeated the combined forces of Europe. Not only one country. The combined forces of Europe, under the Holy League, under the Pope himself. Hayreddin Barbarossa won this decisive battle. And they say this one battle itself was a reason for Ottoman domination in the Mediterranean for 300 years. Just this one battle. So learn this name, the Battle of Preveza. And learn the year 1538. It was a big deal. And in Islamic history, it was an important battle. So that is a summary, respected friends. And of course, as we say, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. No person is immortal. Every single person will have to leave this world. So in the year 1546, Hayreddin Barbarossa, having spending his life defending Islam and serving Islam, and spending his entire life protecting Muslims and serving the cause of Islam, in the year 1546, living in Istanbul at that time, living in the center of the Ottoman Empire at that time, he passed away and left the world. And as the historians say at that time, the king of the sea has died. The king of the sea has died and he has left this world. So this was an overview of the life of the Barbarossa brothers, and specifically Aruj, and Hayreddin or Khidr. So this was an overview to give us an idea, or to give us the highlights or a sneak peek into the lives of these great brothers. Of course, there's much more to the story than that. In fact, one of the more fascinating things, respected friends, I'll share with you, documented miracles. Documented miracles. In this battle of Preveza, the Muslims were in danger. But keep in mind that in an era where there's no electric motors, the wind means everything. The wind is the difference between the battle, between you winning the battle and you losing the battle. And when the combined forces of Europe came against Barbarossa with 400 ships, in the morning, Barbarossa noticed, Hayreddin noticed, the wind is against him. The wind is coming towards him, and it gave the advantage to the enemy. Friends, it's documented. Hayreddin Barbarossa took pieces of paper, wrote the verses of the Quran, and threw them into the ocean. And documented, it is documented, the winds were going against him. The moment he put the verse of the Quran in the ocean, the wind changed direction and started going against the enemy. This is documented, respected friends. Even the non-Muslim chroniclers document this. Right? He wrote this down in the verse of the Quran. Having full faith, he dropped them in the ocean, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the tide. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the direction of the wind, and the direction of the battle also changed as well. So it's documented by many individuals. Hayreddin Barbarossa was not an evil man. He was a saint who is very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He spent his life in worship. In fact, it's also documented, he visited Bursa. Who knows what the significance of Bursa is in Turkey, you guys? We'll end on this. Who knows why the city of Bursa is so important? Yes, good. So all the Ottoman, many of the Ottoman Khalifas and the Sultans are buried there. Right? It's a historical place. Many of them are buried there. So it's documented. Hayreddin Barbarossa visited Bursa, did khatam of the Quran for the pious people there, gave thousands of dollars in charity when he visited these places. He wasn't your normal pirate, you guys. He was a saint. He was a great naval commander. He was an intelligent individual that spoke 6 languages. He's not your unrefined and uneducated pirate that attacks anyone and anything. So this was a summary of the story of Hayreddin Barbarossa. Right? So, inshallah, anyone who is interested, as we said, we have these 2 copies, inshallah, within our masjid. Inshallah, anyone who's interested can take a copy, read the book, inshallah, share with others, inshallah. And please don't go and sell it online. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the love and give us the interest to learn, and zeal and enthusiasm to learn about our history. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically to give us the love and understanding of the Ottoman Empire and how great it was. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the love and interest to learn about these great Islamic heroes, like Hayreddin Barbarossa, like Sultan Sulayman the Magnificent, and the great sultans and rulers and ulama and scholars of the Ottoman Khilafat. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah bil alameen.
I didn't record.
Mixed up. Yeah, I did get them mixed up. Okay. Oh, you did it? Okay.
Yeah.